Hey, 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 it's AAA Wednesday, which stands for Ask Alyssa Anything. In these sessions, I am answering all your questions about the book publishing industry, the querying process, and simply how to strengthen your story. Thank you so much to everyone who is engaging with these videos. I'm really enjoying getting to speak to specific things that are on your mind and hopefully alleviate some of your concerns as you go down this strenuous writing and publishing journey. I want to help you out however I can. Let's get some housekeeping out of the way before we dive into today's questions. First things first, if you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Join this amazing community of storytellers and writers. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps out my channel and helps me reach even more writers and grow this community even more. And I have a free resource I want to make sure you're aware of. The link is in the description below, and it is my free story self-assessment worksheet. This is a resource I designed to help you see your story from a completely different perspective. I'm going to ask you to evaluate different elements of your story so we can see where you're feeling really good and confident and what you're feeling less confident in. And those can be then your areas for improvement and goals that you can set to improve on the next draft. So I really hope that helps you out. Downloading the resource is going to sign you up for my newsletter, where I publish exclusive interviews with publishing industry insiders and established authors. So you don't want to miss out on all of the amazing tips they've been giving in the newsletter. I also have the link directly to the newsletter for you to check out in the description. We have some excellent questions on deck today, so without further ado, let's dive in. First question here is in two parts, so I'm going to address them one by one. I've loved all your tips on querying, and I was wondering if you had any advice on ways to bolster an author bio if you don't yet have any publications. I've seen other authors use clubs or groups they are a part of, but I'm really struggling to find these resources. The writing groups I have found seem to be more emphatic about discussing other famous writers and the writing process than the actual writing. I don't mean to sound harsh, that's totally their prerogative, but I wondered if you could shed light on specific groups or associations to be part of and/or other ways to highlight in my bio that I am putting in effort and dedicated to growing as a writer. The author bio can be super tricky, especially if you are an emerging author and you don't have a specific credential like a creative writing degree or an MFA or specific publications that you can point to. Now, that all being said, I really want you to understand that literary agents are going to be evaluating your premise and your pitch and your sample pages above all else. If they love your premise, sample pages, and pitch, it is truly not going to make a difference to them if you mention being part of a specific writing group or a specific association, or if you're not a member of any of those. While being part of writing clubs and organizations can absolutely help you grow your writing community, create a support network, and can help you actually get closer to finishing your draft because you get motivation and inspiration, etc., etc. They're good for all of those things. But are they essential to have in terms of you need them so a literary agent is going to pick out your query among others? Absolutely not. In fact, the honest truth is that a literary agent is going to quickly skim your bio, and unless anything is really sticking out to them, like you are a member of a very prestigious MFA program like the Iowa Writers Workshop, or you have a prestigious publication, then it's really not gonna make or break anything. And you do not need any of those prestigious credentials or writing organizations to create a successful query at all. If you don't have any of them, I don't even recommend going out of your way to try to bolster your bio, as you say. I recommend just being honest. Your bio can be 2 or 3 sentences. It doesn't have to be long at all. Just mentioning where you're based and what you do outside of writing is plenty enough. Yes, if you want to give additional insight into your experience as a writer, by all means do so if you have that. But remember, literary agents are talent scouts and they're always looking for new talent. So if you have none of the writing credentials that everyone talks about when querying, then you're not necessarily at a disadvantage. It ultimately comes down to the strength of the story itself in their eyes. So to summarize, absolutely join a writing group or an organization if it makes sense for you. And if you find value in what they're providing, it sounds like you've done some research and you haven't really found that value, but absolutely don't force it because it is not a necessity. Let's go into the second part of this question. Is an author website necessary, at the very least for networking purposes? If so, what should be included in terms of sample writing? I feel torn between putting my best foot forward and wanting my best work to be easy to find, or saving my favorite or best pieces to hopefully be published someday. Any tips? Piggybacking on that, I would so love any thoughts you have for pitching short stories to lit mags or finding other ways into publishing, but I understand your background is in Big Five, so it might not intersect. So an author website becomes especially helpful if you are actively trying to get other work published. So say that you work as a journalist, then absolutely an author website is a great way to showcase your portfolio. Or say that you are a content writer of some kind, an author website, I would say, is very helpful for professional reasons because it is part of your work other than just this creative book that you are trying to get published, right? Now, in the case that you have written a novel that you want to get published traditionally, you don't necessarily have any other writing publications of any kind or any other writing pursuits really outside of your book work, then it really isn't totally necessary to have an author website. It's up to you if you want to make one or not. Later down the line, whenever you are ultimately publishing your book, whether that is through self-publishing or traditional publishing, you will absolutely want to make an author website so that readers can find you and see other ways to connect with you via your website, but it's not really necessary at the pre-launch phase. To your point about publishing sample work on your website, in the latter case where you have a book project that you are trying to get published and maybe you have some other unpublished short stories, I would not recommend publishing those on your website because then that precludes the ability for those to get published in literary magazines like you referenced. I would only add them to the portfolio on your website as links if they actually get published elsewhere. Here's another question. When should I give my book to beta readers? Should I make my book as good as it can be, or can I give them a draft I feel confident about but still needs a bit of work? I think the answer to the question of when to engage with beta readers comes down to what are you looking to get from the beta readers in terms of feedback? Are you stuck? And you really need an external perspective to help you through certain elements of the story that you can't figure out. Like, you know, a certain character journey is not working, but you don't quite know how to tweak it so that it comes across effectively. In that case, it could be very helpful to work with a beta reader now if you know that the story isn't where you want it to be, but you've kind of lost a sense of what you can do next tangibly. You just really need that external perspective. I would also say that that's a good situation to consider working with a professional editor in. If you currently have a draft and you feel good about it, but you know that there are certain other things you want to do to it, like perhaps you have a scene you want to add, or you haven't even finished the draft yet, and you have a clear vision of what all needs to go into it, I would recommend getting the completed draft ready and then sending it to the beta readers once everything that's in your head is on the page. Because then you're going to present them basically the entire product, right? Everything that you have in you right now to give them in terms of this story. You want to give them as complete a draft as possible because that's going to likely result in the most helpful feedback. For instance, if you give them a draft that is unfinished and you have a vision for how you want the story to end, and then you present it to them, and then they feel like something was missing from the story that you were actually going to address in the ending already, then that wasn't really helpful feedback because you could have just sent them the completed draft and they wouldn't have had that feedback or that question, right? Getting feedback from beta readers is ultimately different than working with a professional editor, so I recommend checking out my video that goes through the differences between the two arrangements and how to figure out what's really best for you at this phase, so I will leave that in the description for you to check out as well. We have time for one more question today. Can authors change POVs from book to book? For example, if my first book is in third person limited, should my next book also be in third person limited? Is it important to keep the same style from book to book? My first manuscript is in third, and I want my next book to be in first person, but I was afraid that would be like switching genres where a pseudonym would be needed. You can absolutely switch POVs, and you can absolutely switch genres in your books without even needing to go under a pen name or a pseudonym. There are plenty of examples of authors who write in drastically different styles, even different genres, so certainly different POVs, and all of those books are still published under their own name. You as an author are not stuck to one specific style or one specific genre. Now, readers might come to, as they get intimate with your work, expect certain things from your storytelling, but I don't want you to think that means that you're pigeonholed in a specific way. You're creative and you absolutely should feel empowered to experiment across your stories. And there are many best-selling authors who do just that. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's AMA session. If you have a question you'd like to ask me, please leave it in the comments here to enter my queue, and I will do my best to get back to as many as I can. If you're enjoying these sessions, questions, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a lot to me as we grow this amazing community. And don't forget your free story self-assessment and the link to my newsletter in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.